So we're back with the 12 Survivors medic roll. This time I have outfitted without what I think I need in it. This is based on my experiences, what I've needed in the past, what I think I might encounter in the future. This is kind of catered towards a more general purpose first aid kit mixed in with a little bit of what I experienced as a rescue diver, which is mostly issues to do with decompression sicknesses or bends, as some people call it, like tension pneumothorax, has some stuff for that, and definitely CPR. But this is the kit, all outfitted how I want it. It weighs in at 4.5 pounds, or actually it's 4 pounds, 5 ounces. It is about 7 inches diameter this way. And of course it didn't change the length, so it's still about 15 inches long. And now I'll do a close-up and we can see what's inside. To start off with, I just have a small little light. Some people use pen lights. I use this guy. It is a Nightcore USB rechargeable light. This kind of, I'll show later that all my flashlights, all my tech is all USB rechargeable for solar panel purposes. But it's a little tiny flashlight, yet it is bright enough to have 45 lumens, and this is good enough for most medical things. And if you hold down the power button, you can change from 1 lumen to 45, so you can almost use it like a pen light for eye dilation. You can judge it exactly how you want it. It's a nice little thing. It's only like 10 bucks. That's why I picked it up, and it fits nicely in the kit. Over on this side, we kind of deal with more of the CPR for rescue diver related stuff first. The main thing that I have in here that's pretty much most important for me, this actually normally goes on my person if I'm actually rescue diving, is a larger CPR mask. It is the kind that actually has a proper regulator, face seal. It's not just a little cheapy mask like the little plastic ones. This actually goes over the nose, and it's a lot easier to do when you're actually trying to perform CPR while swimming. Then of course I have this guy, the Decompression Pen. This is for tension pneumothorax, which is one of the more common ways you can get hurt while you're ascending. If you're not breathing out, the air in your lungs will keep expanding and then eventually blow a hole through part of your lung, which is probably the easiest way to get tension pneumothorax. It's actually a lot harder to get it in combat. So this is actually more important in a kit like this for rescue divers than it is for some sort of like IFAC kits, but I keep them in both. Then I said this is general purpose, so I have some Hemostats for arterial bleeds. I just have them in there. I've never actually used them on a person. Then I got some titanium shears. These ones are actually a different brand than the other ones because they were on sale at the time, but they are the Physician's Care. They're the same bloody things though, except for these are yellowy orange color, the other ones are red, but they're constructed the exact same, probably in the same factory. Then I have a 6-inch Israeli Bandage. Nothing special there. And then the nice thing about this kit is it's long enough where you can take a full-size SAM splint, the 36 inches, and fold it in thirds, and it'll fit right in this pocket nice and perfectly. Gives a nice little support, and it's nice for sprains or strains. Then lastly, in this little pocket, I just have a cheapy little mirror. I use it only pretty much for first aid on myself, like on my face or something. You could use it as a signaling mirror. I have better ones. This one, the beam is very not concentrated, so I don't really like it for that, but it's good for just looking at like eye injuries or something. Next thing over, it's probably the more important section. I just have a bunch of different gloves, different styles. I don't have that many right now because I've been trying to make kits for my entire family, but they're just different nitrile gloves. That's all I keep in that pocket. In this pocket, I keep my little scalpel just in case I need it, the little safety scalpel blade. It's nice to be able to cut if you need to. I have some very sharp tweezers, mostly for splinters, but it can be used for other things as well. Then I have 2 SAM finger splints, and then some chapstick, because this can be an emergency for some people sometimes. The medicated kind. So next thing over, we got some triple antibiotic ointment. Then my very small pharmacy. I don't do pills really at all. I try and avoid them as much as I possibly can, but I just kind of have like immediate relief stuff. This stuff is probably the most important for me, antidiarrheals. Then I got a small little packet of flu medication. It's only enough for a couple hours, but it might get you through the symptoms. A full thing of some non-aspirin pain relief pills. This is anti-allergy pills. Then lastly, just a small little thing of nasal decongestants. Nothing special there. The only thing I wrote down on the front is that the white pills are non-aspirin pain relievers, and I have the expiration date on them and how often to take the pills. In this section, we deal mostly with wound closure and prep. I got a shit ton of alcohol swabs because I find them very useful in certain circumstances, and I use them as a fire starter sometimes if I'm being lazy. And they're cheap as hell. And then in this section, this is wound closure. I got 4 things of this, what is it, 1/4 inch by 3 inch steri strips, and then I got 3 things of the 1/2 inch by 4 inches steri strips, and then 3 containers of super glue, because super glue is probably the most useful thing you can have in terms of wound closure when you're talking water related sports like scuba diving. Band-aids and all that stuff, they don't stick for very long in salt water. You have no problem with super glue. In this section, this is where I want to add more stuff, but this is just my notepads, waterproof paper, pen, and Sharpie, so that way I can write down anything I need. It's actually pretty important when you're talking diving, because decompression sickness is often related to injuries that result from how long you were down below, how many dives you did in the day, all that kind of stuff, your nitrogen loading. And if you can write down all the information off their computer or gauges before it's forgotten or lost, it can help when the real rescue needs to happen. This section is kind of the joke section. It's just a shit ton of Band-Aids, because Band-Aids are useful. They're the thing I use most in these kits. Next thing over, we're talking rescue purposes. So these things, I don't really think they work as well as bivvies, but I don't think bivvies work all that well either. But what they can do is give comfort, and they can kind of treat shock. So I have 2 emergency blankets to wrap someone up. They can be useful if they've just gone through a kind of ordeal. And then I just have a cheap poncho, because it can be useful in some circumstances, mostly to kind of put something below the person or away from their gear, because like I said, it's covered in salt water, and just having a barrier and then in combination with the emergency blankets might be enough to treat some forms of shock. In this section I have my tapes. I got a self-adhesive bandage, some of that nice Transport, whatever it's called, yeah, Transport tape from 3M. This stuff sticks almost better than duct tape, and it breathes pretty well. It's very useful in most circumstances. Then I have 2 different sizes of Gorilla tape. I think this is 10 feet, and I think this also might be 10 feet, different size Gorilla tape. And the next section over, I have my tourniquets, which I don't use very frequently, but they are useful. So I got the cat tourniquet, standard stuff. Then I actually have a latex and a small one for smaller injuries. I just thought I have room for them, and I wanted more tourniquets, because you can never have too many, as long as you can take the weight. And then this is the last small section. This is minor gauze rolls, conforming gauze, stretch gauze. I just have several different kinds. I think I have pretty much just what would fit. I have 3 of these guys, which are the 4 inches by 75 inch gauze rolls. I have 3 of those. Then 2 smaller ones, 5 centimeter by 4.5 meters. The final large section, got major blood, got the clotting sponge, I have compressed gauze, I have 3 5-inch by 9-inch abdominal pads, the nice big, almost, you know, the period pads, but they absorb blood pretty well. Then I have, I think it's 8 of the 4x4 12-ply gauze packs for minor wound dressings. And then I got, I think, 8 more Telfa non-adherent pads that I can cut down to whatever size I need. So between all that, it can fix almost everything I encounter in a normal experience. If I'm rescue diving, this would normally go in my bag and then just stay out on deck, so that way it's actually nearby. So real quick, here's the entire contents of my kit. Like I said, this is not an all-encompassing kit. This is what I intend to encounter and what I have encountered in the past and what I prepare for in my typical rescue diving situation. With this, you can generally get someone through it, combined with, especially if you have an IFAC with you, then almost anything you'll encounter, you can at least keep them alive until you can bring them to the real professionals. This is everything here other than this little needle, which I should really do a video on how to use this correctly, because this is pretty important for rescue divers, because tension pneumothorax is a very common injury, at least more common than most. Injuries aren't very common in scuba diving to begin with. But everything else in here, anyone can use correctly pretty quickly. And the big thing is, for me, it needed to weigh under 5 pounds. That works for my kit. I also do take this backpacking, and so with all that considered, I think it's everything I need, and it will handle most situations pretty effectively. You can add a lot more stuff. If you need to change it, especially your pharmacy, go for it. But it should work out in most situations. This should at least get you started and then add what you need from here. But with that in mind, please leave in the comment section anything you would recommend me switch out, add to. I mean, generally this has worked for me in the past, so I don't know how much I want to change it, but if you have a good idea, especially in terms of something that'll work better, especially in a saltwater environment, let me know, please. I only have a few rescue diver friends, and we kind of all agree on this setup, but if you know something I don't know, please let me know in the comments.